Oh, geez, you're here already. Frankie told me that you wanted to hear the whole story. I wrote some of it down because it all happened back in 2005 and my memory's a little ooh-ooh. Anyway, just let me have a cup of coffee here and we'll get started. Okay, Mavis here. I've been a school bus driver since Noah loaded up the ark. But funnily enough, this story is not about the kids. It's about a group of old ladies who call themselves the Pinch Penny Poker Players. And I'll tell you right off the top, I would not have signed up for this charter at all, but my finances were tighter than a girdle. I was semi-retired, up on the spare board, only getting about 3 days work in a 2-week pay period. My pension is peanuts. So when Sam, my sleazy employer from Excel Bus, called and offered me 6 driving days and plus expenses, I was pumped. He says some old lady poker club wants to rent the bus for a week and go on a Christmas light tour of Vancouver Island. How many and how old, I asked. Oh, he says, not many. There's just 5 of them, and they're in their 70s and 80s, and they're all in good health. Well, except for the one with MS. And she's got a care aid. And my mother's going. So why don't they just rent a van from Budget? Well, he says they need drivers. And also a hydraulic lift, because the lady in the wheelchair, it's motorized. And your mother? Oh, well, when I told them how much it would cost, they were very disappointed. They didn't think they could come up with that much. So I told them I would give them a discount if they would take my mother along. Sam's mother lives with him, and she drives him nuts. So that's the elephant under the rug on this one. Come on, Mavis, he says, it's a sweet deal, and you'll be doing the old ladies a favor. I already got one girl driver, and if you go, you can share a room and split and then reduce their expenses. Well, who's the other driver, I asked. Jude Faraday. I hung up. If there is a God, I thought, he is a nasty, lesbian-hating piece of work. I ran into Jude Faraday in the early 70s at Champagne Charlie's. Me and the gay gals from our softball team were in our corner booth, and she came around passing out flyers to her art show. That baby dyke's got balls, I thought. Okay, not proud of it, but that's the way we thought then. I went to her art show. I bought a picture. She came over to my apartment to help me hang it. We were together for 23 years. Then bang, she up and finds her soulmate, and it is not me. It took me years to put myself together after that, and I was nearly normal. And she gets a job at my bus company. She said we could just be friends. I wanted to drive a stake through her heart. No way was I sharing a room with that woman. Just then, the landlady knocks on my door.
Mavis, I know you're in there. I want my rent check.
Oh, sheesh. I called Sam back before he got somebody else and said I'd do it. So we're supposed to clock in at 7:30 Wednesday morning. I went down at 7 o'clock to get in ahead of Jude. It was dark and cold, but it wasn't raining. Most of the other buses were out. There were a few drivers doing their pre-trip checks, but I didn't know any of them. I decided to go up to the office to get the paperwork done. Sam handed me the keys to 1720. It's a Bluebird microbus with 4 double seats, a side hydraulic lift in the rear, and space for 2 wheelchairs. I don't like driving it. It's got a Ford chassis, and I think the microbird bus sits stabler on a GM chassis. I would have asked Sam for a different bus, but the phone rang and he got into some bogus sales pitch, and I decided just to go down to the yard and do my walk around. People think that drivers just drive. No, we gotta check the battery, the oil, the brake fluid. We gotta check the lights, pound on the tires to make sure they're inflated. The vehicle has to be safe before we take it out. When I got to the back of the bus, it was unlocked. Oh, this isn't good. And I opened the door. This huge black suitcase with serious combination locks was sitting in it. So that wasn't. I went around to the driver's side, and the door was unlocked too. I opened it and I peered cautiously across the driver's seat. There in the front passenger side seat, dressed entirely in black and clutching a monstrous purse and a Tim Hortons coffee, was Sam's mother, Irene Blaketon. He must have taken her through the drive-thru in the wee hours of the morning and then just dumped her on the bus. "Hi, Mrs. Blaketon, I hope you haven't been waiting long." "Long enough, turn on the heat." Sam brings her to the holiday party every year. That is as cheerful as she gets. I scrambled into the seat and turned on the heat. Then I saw Jude crossing the yard with this huge cardboard box. "What you got there?" I called. "Hi, Mavis," she says. "I brought lap rugs. These buses are made for kids for a few hours each day. They're not going to keep old ladies warm for a week." Wish I'd thought of that. "Open the back door and I'll slide them in," she says. So I went to the back of the bus and I shoved Irene's suitcase and my pack up against the back seat and opened the door. I leaned down to catch the cardboard box, but the thing is, she let go before I had a good grip on it and it fell on the ground. "Oh, donkey dung," she shouts. "Well, it's your fault," I said. "You let go before I was ready." She straightens up from picking up the blankets and she looks at me and she says, "Whoa, Mavis, let's stay in the present, shall we?" "Damn, that's not what I meant. I'm talking about blankets," and the woman goes all touchy-feely on me. "You want to stay in the present? Just get in the damn bus and drive." It's hard to lay rubber with a school bus, but Jude gave it her best shot. Our first pickup was Frida Green. She was the one who arranged the whole trip, and also she was the one in the wheelchair, so we'd have time if we had any trouble getting her on the bus. She and her care aide were waiting outside the apartment when we drove up. Jude backed up to the entrance and I got out to open the lift door. Frida introduced herself and her care aide, Raven Jimmy, who looked to be a short, well-muscled woman in her 20s. Frida looked like she would be a tall woman if she could have stood up. She had salt and pepper gray hair, and even though she was smiling, there were lines of strain in her face. I wondered if MS caused pain. She had a canvas sack in her lap and a clipboard wedged between the sack and her chest. Raven Jimmy was holding a almost full garbage bag and a mid-sized suitcase. I opened up the back door and Raven threw them into the bus and turned around and headed back toward the apartment. I was getting a little nervous. I thought she was going with us. But I decided I would go ahead and fire up the hydraulic lift so Frida could get on the bus. I opened the door and I got a hold of the starter button. It's a plastic button attached by a short electrical cord to the lift motor. I hit the button. Nothing. I hit it again. Sound of that motor going was like the choir of angels. The platform moved out and came down. You could tell Frida had a lot of experience. She waited until the motor was quiet, and then she drove onto the platform and turned her power off. I hit the button twice for good luck, and up she rose. When the motor quieted, she drove off and maneuvered herself into one of the wheelchair spaces. Then I looked up to see Raven coming back to the bus with a big suitcase, a small suitcase, and a pack on her back. She hucked everything into the bus and she turned around and started back toward the apartment. "Whoa," I said, "how much stuff do you have?" "Oh," Frida says, "she's just getting the bag chairs. We're going to need them for the Ladysmith Light Up parade, and we thought we might use them at Butchart Gardens. We haven't decided yet." Sure enough, there was Raven heading back toward the bus with 5 sets of folding chairs and bags. Aren't you going to be in your wheelchair? Yeah, she said, but Bunny doesn't have a chair, and we thought you bus drivers and the boss's mother might want to sit down at the parade. Clearly, this woman thought of everything. Good to know. Raven shoved the chairs into the back of the bus and then hopped up after them. I'm not telling you how many years it's been since I've been able to hop up, but since I've been able to climb through the back of the bus without the use of the stairs. But I never hopped. Clearly, she could be very helpful. I wonder if she would do things that weren't related to Frida. Time enough to find out afterwards. I snapped the safety straps on Frida's chair and I went up to sit behind Jude. The next person was Bunny Thurlow. She was waiting outside. She was dressed in a fake fuzzy leopard skin coat, a car coat, with thick black tights and suede boots that laced to her knees with big pink pom-poms. She had a rolling red suitcase and a huge purse with a ring of tiny trolls attached. I mean, she did not at all look like a woman who had spent 15 of the last 20 years caring for her husband who had early Alzheimer's. I found that out later. I've got a surprise, she called, and she reached into her purse and pulled out what looked like a bed sheet and a roll of gaffer tape. She flapped the sheet open and held it up. The purple glitter letters across the top said Pinch Penny Poker Players, and the big pink letters across the middle said Butchart Gardens or Bust. Frida clapped her hands. Irene trumpeted, "She cannot put that sign on the bus." Jude spoke up. Actually, Mrs. Blaketon, Excel bus charter contracts state that groups can put signs on the bus as long as they're not obscene or abusive. I don't know if she made that up or if she actually reads that stuff. In any case, Bunny was almost finished taping the sign to the side of the bus, so all Irene could do was scowl. I heaved Bunny's suitcase into the back, and Bunny got on and sat and plumped herself and her purse down next to Raven. Next up was May Wan. She was waiting outside for us, surrounded by large plastic shopping bags and a black suitcase. She had a bag chair on her shoulder. "No way we bust," what she said when we drove up. "We go all the way." It turns out that May was in full Christmas mode. She had a lot of relatives on the island, and one bag held her clothes, the other bag held her knitting. Everything else was Christmas presents, including the big black bag. So I grabbed the chair from her and I got a couple of sacks and hauled them to the back. I'm thinking I'll wait on the suitcase to the very end so I don't have to move it very far. But Raven hopped out of the back of the bus, grabbed that sucker and winged it into the back. Thank you, Raven. Last 2 passengers lived together. I was hoping they'd pack together. When we drove out, one of them was outside with 2 mid-sized red rolling suitcases, a pack on her back, and a bag chair over her shoulder. I thought, this could work, depending on what the other one was doing. I started up the sidewalk to get the red rolling suitcases, and the other one came out of the door, holding a big bundle wrapped in a blanket. She also had a pack on her back and a bag chair slung over her shoulder. The packs were identical. The chairs were identical. They were both wearing green and black Gore-Tex jackets, black jeans, and black runners. They even had identical haircuts, pure white page boys. I mean, you expect to see something like this in kids once in a while, but you don't expect women in their 80s to dress and look alike. When I got closer, I tried to see if their faces had wrinkled the same. Incredible! Clearly, they were enjoying my shock. Mary Lou Niebauer and Frankie O'Mara were identical twins. "Do you two dress alike all the time?" I asked. "Oh no," said one. Actually, when I was married and Frank was in the convent, it was easy to tell us apart. I was the one in the wimple, the other one said. I was flabbergasted, but I managed to keep my mouth shut. I just got those suitcases and rolled them up to the back of the bus. Then one of them comes up to me, the one with the bundle comes up to me and says, "Could you find a place for this? My great-grandson says it's fragile." Oh boy, things didn't look good. And then I realized the blanket box hadn't been full. Maybe it would fit in there. So I took the bundle around to the front, up to the blanket box, and it fit all right, but I realized immediately it made the box top heavy. First turn we took with any speed, the whole thing would fall into the aisle. So I took everything out, I put the bundle in the bottom, and then I put the blankets back on top. "Don't let me forget I put it there," I said to everyone within earshot. When Frankie and Mary Lou got on the bus, everybody cheered. Frida said, "You're doing the identical thing again. We thought it might be fun," one of them said. Then Jude announced that we had lap blankets, and Bunny, May, and I think Mary Lou said they wanted one, and so I got 3 blankets from the box and I passed them out. Jude put the bus in drive and we were off to the ferry. It had taken us 2 hours to get them on the bus, but we still had time if nothing went wrong. As soon as we got out of town, things started to go wrong. Mary Lou decided that we had to turn around and go back because she'd forgot to turn the stove off. The only reason I know it was Mary Lou is because the other twins said, "Oh, Mary Lou, quit fussing." Then they got in a fight about whether or not the stove was off. Then Jude shouted back that we couldn't turn around or we'd miss our ferry. Then Bunny remembered that she'd forgot to stop her paper. The whole thing was beginning to descend into a huge forgetting when Frankie says, "Mary Lou, if you must, take out your cell phone, call our manager, and have her go check on our phone and on our stove. You too, Bunny, call the paper and stop it for the week." "I don't have a cell phone," said Bunny. "They make me nervous." "I'll do it," said Frida. That was the first time I was glad for a cell phone, because secretly I am in agreement with Bunny about the damn things. Then the whole thing was okay until Eagle Ridge. Frida had Raven pass out the itinerary, and she announced that anybody who hadn't paid had to pay by Thursday, because paying was on her pre-trip due list, and she was now on her trip due list, and she couldn't do 2 trips at once. Then we all settled down to a normal bus trip right up to the moment that we were getting everybody off the bus on the ferry. Everybody got off fine except Frida. When I hit the button, I got nothing. I hit it again, nothing. Frida announced that she could stay on the bus. She had a good book. Then the penny pinchers decided that they would stay on the bus and keep her company. Irene got off and went upstairs. Enough said. I went up to the front of the bus and I looked at Jude. Jude said, I can stay with the bus. I said, "Do you think if I go upstairs by myself I can pee for everybody?" "Oh," she said, "I didn't think of that." "Try it for a minute," I said. Her face lit up. "We can use the manual override." Well, maybe. All these lifts got manual overrides so people don't get stuck. It's just that we use them so seldom we forget about them. So I went back to the list, found the crank handle, pulled it down, and pulled on it. Nothing. I got both hands on it and pulled with all my might. Nothing. "It's stuck," I said. "Let me try," she says. "Okay, Wonder Woman, have at it." So she gets off the bus, she gets in there, and she gets her hand on the crank, and she pulls for all she's worth. Nothing. So, "Mavis, get your hand in here. Maybe the 2 of us can do it." I gave her the withering "we have history" look, because in order to do that, we would have to spoon like we used to, only with clothes on. "What?" she says. "You want her to stay on the bus?" So I got my hand in there and I pulled like a plow horse. It wasn't moving. I put my chin on her shoulder for extra purchase, and I remembered what it was like without clothes on. Crap! That lever was not moving. I backed up and I said, Raven, could you help us here a minute? So Raven got off and she tried. She couldn't get it to move either. She pulled with all her worth, and then she said, it must be rusted solid in there. Jude got back on the bus and turned on the ignition. Try it again, she said. So I hit the button again. Nothing. She said, bang the housing on the side of the bus. So I did. Sound of that motor, such a relief. The platforms came out and went down. Frida turned on her power and motored off. I was so relieved. We all were. The penny pinchers filed off the front of the bus. It was all great. Jude says, hurry up and put the lift back so I can turn off the ignition. No way, like I would trust that little bugger. I said, my idea is we leave the lift down. And then one of us stays with the bus for the first half of the trip, and the other one stays with the bus for the second half of the trip. And she said, don't be daft. We put the lift back now, and then when we go to load, if it doesn't work, Frida can motor off with Raven, and we can drive off after them and fix it in the yard, out of everybody's way. All right, I said, but if it doesn't work, you're the one who's going to stand down here and press on the button till hell freezes over. Just press the button, she said. So I pressed the button. The lift rose and folded into the bus. She turned off the ignition. I closed the door. She went up to the passenger deck by the stairs. I took the elevator. The penny pinchers had a whole parade route involving the washrooms, the gift store, and the cafeteria. I had no idea where Irene was, and I was fervently hoping not to run into Jude. I gambled on her going to the snack bar for a jumbo hot dog, so I went to the cafeteria and got myself a sunshine breakfast. I picked out a seat where I didn't have to look at anything but the view, and I was about to bite into my hash browns when this megaphone voice said, "Someone stole my brooch, I'm phoning Sam." Oh Lord, Sam has never solved a problem in his life, he's only created them. I didn't want Irene phoning him. So I promised her that I would follow her around the ship and look for her brooch. Fine, let's go. I'm eating here, I almost screamed. I mean, Irene is not the only one who can be definite. She plunked herself down across from me, swallowed up my view. I put down my head and concentrated on eating. After that, I followed her around the ship looking for her brooch, and we even asked the purser to make an announcement, but nothing came of it. I didn't want to tell the penny pinchers because I was sure they hadn't taken it, and I didn't want to tell Jude because Irene is not the only one who is capable of making a tempest out of a teapot. So by the time the captain announced that it was time to return to the car deck, I was trailing a whole string of worries. What would Irene do? What would Jude do? What would the blessed little plastic starter do? I get down to the car deck. Jude's got the entire bus loaded up, including Frida. Hey, Mavis, she says, you want to drive the next leg? No, I said. I got on the bus with Irene, but before I sat down, I turned and said, I stood in the aisle and I said, Irene had lost her brooch, and did anybody see it? Irene helped out by trumpeting, "My son owns this company." May reached into one of her bags and pulled out a sterling silver brooch with a sapphire surrounded by cubic zirconiums. "Is this it?" she says. Irene snatched it out of her hand without a word. "Rude, why don't you?" And then May says, "Well, I found it behind the bus on the way upstairs and I put it in my bag and then I forgot it." I mean, you could tell everybody on the bus believed her except Irene. That could have been seriously nasty. So I sat down and I thought, hopefully This is the last we'll hear of Calling Sam.